fringe term conspiracy theory, that's when suddenly they begin to gain a little bit more credibility.
I mean, it's 60 million people over in the UK, and to have just, three parties that seems to, bow down to the same master, it's pitiful, and now they wheel out a third option in that sense, and furthermore, it's like, it seems to me then that people also, they know that something's wrong or off, but they're still waiting for the authorities to come out with an alternative for them that they can choose to vote for, or to, what I mean? It's the lack of action here, basically.
Well, I think this is what will be revealed very soon after the election, and I think everybody always likes to hope there can be this incredible change, as people hoped with Barack Obama, for instance, in America. And obviously, stylistically, to some degrees, change does come, but what tends to happen is after a year or so, there's the sudden realization that whoever is in power basically seems to be working for some higher force, and the hands are tied. And particularly, as I said, with Britain's financial position, I think that will be very quickly revealed, and whoever is in power is not going to have much leeway in which to deal with it. And I think this is where suddenly the whole system is going to come very heavily into question.
I want to talk a little bit about the media's participation in this as well. Again, just to reemphasize, we see the emergence of a new media taking place on the web, and although that is not perfect, at least it offers alternatives to what the mainstream is doing, and that's superb. And although all of us don't have all the answers all the time, it still means that the questions are being raised, which is the important thing, to make people think for themselves about many of these issues, especially in terms of the conspiracies and so forth. But when I read the beginning of your book, The Truth Agenda, Andy, I was just wondering a little bit in terms of the BBC. They had a show called The One Show, I think, right? And they interviewed yourself, who was more on the panel. There were three of you, Keith, and then it was Marcus Allen as well.
That's correct.
And they interviewed you for about 2 hours. And basically, what ended up happening is you were anticipating the premiere on the TV there, and then about 30 seconds or something showed up.
It was. Well, I mean, we all know, anybody that's been involved with television, you will be edited down to maybe 2 or 3 minutes, but it was a bit of a shock to see what was actually a very good discussion. And they spent time and money, they hired a nice hotel to film it in, and a lot of time and effort went in, and very sensible discussion about all of the areas that you can call conspiracy if you wish. And then, in fact, I think I got to say about one line, Marcus got to say one line, and John Wickham, who was the other man involved, got to say nothing at all. And then they cut straight back to the studio, where they were all very condescending and that usual smug arrogance that unfortunately we see a lot in the media over here, that obviously people like us must be mad.
Yeah.
And, what funny, entertaining people we are to have these strange views. And I'm afraid that media smugness is something which keeps down debate. It's used to stifle debate, whether it be about climate change or real political change or, anything that may be going on. The people that are given the space on the radio and on the television are usually from a very narrow selection of pundits, usually, academics that will only ever look at the official view on something. And that's a great shame, because there's a lot of people out there who basically, they're well-educated, they're sensible people, they have a different view, and that different view is deliberately withheld from the public. And I think that is very wrong. And that's not to say you don't get the occasional chink, and, we do have, of course, TV channels like Edge Media, which I think is Sky Channel 200, that is managing to put a lot of the stuff out there, but it's still obviously seen as the minority. The big channels, you're just not going to get much of the word in there, and if you do, they will also have somebody to come on to tell everybody why, again, these people are misguided, they're stupid, they're mad. And again, we have this, what it is a twisting of the world, because the funny thing is, when you actually speak to people, and I spend a lot of time giving lectures to all sorts of mainstream groups, like Rotary clubs, Roundtable, Women's Institute, when you actually talk to people out there, you realize there's more people that question than less.
Yeah.
In other words, the people on the radio actually represent the minority view. And yet we're presented, therefore, with a completely warped version of reality from the media. Now, whether the media is controlled by the powers that be, or whether, as I think often is the case, it's controlling itself, especially the BBC, out of fear of losing the license fee, well, maybe there's a combination of those things going on. But either way, the media does not represent the world accurately. And I think everybody in the heart of hearts knows that.
Absolutely. They're, in my opinion, about shaping opinions of other people in that sense. And again, the point here, I guess, is that we can't rely on the mainstream media to cover some of these things for us, and people can't, again, sit around and wait for the answers to come to them. But my question as well that comes up is, who are watching those tapes, who are studying you guys for 2 hours when you, in that sense, give out all your information there, share with a TV network. They come there with lights and big, nice, fancy cameras and all that. But do you think that those tapes just lie around, or are someone more covertly and sinisterly even studying what you guys have to say to maybe use the word against you eventually if you do get out or get a voice in the media? How's your take on that, Andy?
Well, that is possible. I did write to the producer afterwards when they had shown what was left of it, and I just said very politely it was a great shame that they weren't able to use more of the footage. So I said, would there be any chance it would be used anywhere? And I was told that legally, no, it would never be shown anywhere. It would remain somewhere in the vaults of the BBC. But as you say, it does make you wonder, doesn't it, if in fact it's filed away somewhere. And yet, I mean, the irony is, why would they really need to bother? Because, as you said, with the new media, people like yourselves, people like myself out there trying to get the word of this stuff out there, it's not a secret. It's not a secret to find out what, people like myself or Ian Crane or Marcus Allen are saying. It's out there. It's completely sort of in the public view. So this is the strange thing about it. So, whether or not they really do feel that they need to keep an eye on what the likes of us are saying, I don't know, because in fact it's far more open than the mainstream media coverage is.
Yeah, that's right. And then we have other people. I can't remember his name now, but it was an article a while back where this is a guy within the Obama administration apparently who talked about having what he called cognitive infiltration of various conspiracy groups and 9/11 truth movements and things like that. And on some level, that represents the fact that they obviously consider this to be important enough and a threat enough to send people in there to kind of try to figure out how to discredit some of these movements from within. But it also serves another purpose, which is, of course, to create paranoia, if you will, within these groups, because with the release of a news item like that, which is interesting in itself, you also get people within the movements who are kind of, beginning to, if you will, turn on each other because of these news comes out and so forth. Everyone is a little bit semi-paranoid, you know what I mean? And that's, there are multiple different areas that these various groups feel under attack. Do you think that those attacks are justified, or are people just, paranoid in that sense, Andy? What do you think?
Well, I think it's fairly well known that certainly political movement groups and groups like CND in the 1960s and things like that, I think they were infiltrated in as much as I think the authorities always made sure they had somebody as a member who could relay back what was going on at their meeting. So I think we can fairly safely assume that any group that is campaigning, whether it be for 9/11 truth or even UFO research, whatever it may be, somebody somewhere is going to know in authority what is going on. And I think we have to presume that. The problem is, as you say, as soon as people start to get paranoid, that's when they turn on each other. And then what you find within those groups is that if somebody starts giving any kind of dissenting view, those around them can suddenly say, you must be working for the other side. And of course, that's when the infighting begins, and that's often when these groups then begin to fall apart, which of course then benefits marvellously the authorities who probably didn't want them there in the first place. And I think this is a problem, and I think that happened in amongst, say, the crop circle groups in the 1990s as well. Some of the infighting was sparked by paranoia that, somebody might be working for the other side, as well indeed they might have been. But either way, the result was the same. So I think we always have to guard against paranoia. And I think it is a difficulty keeping